Well, good morning. Welcome to Quarantining with Pastor Michelle. I'm your host, Pastor Michelle. Today is Tuesday, May 19th, and I thought we'd go ahead and start with some good news from CNN. As I said yesterday, I'm going to kind of highlight a different story each day just to change things up. And so our story today is all about treats, all about cakes, which is delicious. I made a cake on Saturday, or I'm trying my best. I made this lemon blueberry poke cake where you're supposed to like make this blueberry filling and you're supposed to pour it into these holes in the cake. Let's just say it didn't turn out the way, it's a little bit too sweet. And that's saying a lot because I love sweet things. But anyway, that's a story for another time. But I wanted to highlight a bakery in Red Wing, Minnesota. So I want you to look at this cake. There we go. There's some beautiful cake right there. Making some cakes for graduates. And so I wanted to highlight, look at those cakes. You know, they're gorgeous, right? A bakery in Red Wing, Minnesota is giving away 800 graduation cakes to students at 12 schools, all thanks to one big-hearted idea and a lot of generosity. Bill Hanich of Hanich Bakery and Coffee Shop wanted to do something nice for the graduates in his town that wouldn't get to fully celebrate their commencement. So what did he do? He decided to make each of them a free cake, a 2-layer round 7-inch cake decorated in their school colors. The bakery is a staple in the small town, so word quickly got out what Hanich was cooking up, or baking up, right? Soon he was fielding calls from private benefactors, businesses, and schools wanting to buy cakes, including one request from a bakery an hour away in Wisconsin that had burned down earlier this year. That one really hit home. What's more, the bakery was struggling under pandemic concerns. But with the outpouring of support from the community, Hanich is busy once again and can keep all of his full-time employees on payroll. So that's awesome. I don't know if you know of any graduates in your own life. I hope that you are doing something for them, thanking them. I know this past Sunday I went and visited 4 of our high school graduates from our church. And I went to their house and hand-delivered their graduation gifts, and they seemed to like it. And it was nice even just visiting with them and their families. So this is a difficult year. I can't even imagine being a high school senior right now. You know, not having a commencement, not getting to walk across the stage, not getting to have a prom. I mean, there's just so many things that they're missing out on. So I feel for them. And I'm well aware all of us are missing out on stuff. So, and today is kind of a rainy day. It's 2 days in a row here in Ohio. So that makes things it adds a little extra layer of difficulty when you're not able to even go outside. So today I do want to share another quote from this book. A gift is not a gift until it is shared. I am in the thrall of the power of words that spill onto the page seemingly of their own accord. The lilt of the language reminds me that a gift is not a gift until it is shared. And I smile knowing that stories live in the soft curl of my knuckle. The keyboard comes alive with images, details, characters in the presence of people that I've carved out of the ether and the sure, solid notion that Creator and my ancestors smile at each line of story splash onto the pure white dazzle of the page, filling in the story, forming it as I'm filled and formed with each tapped letter, crystallized into language. And so we all have our stories to tell, don't we? And so, my friends, let's start out with prayer. Our Father and Mother, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. I was trying to finish it before I sneezed. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Sorry. I felt the sneeze coming on in the middle of the prayer. That, knock on wood, that's never happened at church. That would be crazy. So let's take a deep breath. Let out all the bad and breathe in all the good, right? All right. So our woman of the day is Boudica. She's a Celtic, I don't know how you pronounce it, Celtic queen and a rebel leader. So Boudica was born around the year 30 AD into an Iceni tribe of Celtic people who lived in the area of England now known as East Anglia. Little is known about Boudica's early years, but it is believed that she was a daughter of a powerful local chief. At the time she was born, the Romans had taken charge of Britain. Their rule was generally peaceful, but the Romans controlled much of the land that had once belonged to the native tribes. The Iceni, like the rest of the Britons, were very proud and they were not very happy to be ruled by outsiders. Around 48 AD, Boudica married Prasutacius, king of the Iceni people, who was a strong independent leader and a friend of Rome. Even so, the Iceni had to pay the Roman taxes, and some were even made Roman slaves. Boudica and Prasutacius, who lived in what is now Norfolk, had 2 daughters. Prasutacius fairly and sensibly divided his property and money, so that when he died, the 2 girls would inherit part and the rest would pass to Rome. However, when Prasutacius died, the Roman commanders decided to take all of his property as well as that of the other leaders because Prasutacius had debts that Boudica was unable to pay. The Romans beat her in public and then attacked her daughters. Boudica was furious and wanted revenge, and so did her people. Tall and commanding, Boudica was a powerful figure. She began to gather support against the Romans. The local tribes were often at war with one another, but Boudica convinced them to unite against their common enemy, the Romans who had treated so many tribes unfairly. Boudica succeeded in doing what no king before her had done. She brought the Britons together. In 61 AD, Boudica and Britons, set off for a Roman city. I can't say that name. All right. Which is now known as Colchester, a symbol of Roman power. The great temple to the Roman Claudius, Colchester, did not have many soldiers to protect it, and so Boudica and her followers flattened it. They then moved on to destroy another city, which is now London, followed by the important town of what is now known as St. Albans. So around 80,000 Romans and their supporters were killed by Boudica and the Britons, who dealt harshly with anyone left behind. The Romans were ashamed and even more upset that the raids were led by a woman. So after conquering those cities, Boudica and her army moved north. They ambushed a large group of Roman soldiers on the way, ready to beat their enemy once more. They met the troops of the Roman governor Suetonius in open battle. Although there were far more Britons, they were soon trapped, surrounded by Romans who had better training, discipline, and weapons. The Romans stopped the first wave of Britons with javelins and the second wave with swords and shields. It was a terrible defeat for Boudica's followers. Only 400 Romans were killed in the Battle of Watling Street, but over 200,000 Britons died. Boudica is believed to have died either from her wounds or from taking poison to avoid being captured. Although Boudica's rebellion had nearly forced the Romans out of England, in the end the Romans still won. Nearly 2,000 years later, Boudica has become a legendary leader whose life and actions have inspired many poems, plays, paintings, and stories. Although much of her life is surrounded by myth and mystery, we do know that she achieved one incredible thing. In a time when women were not usually leaders, she managed to do what no man had done, uniting the warring Celtic tribes and leading them successfully against 3 of the greatest Roman cities in England. She still continues to remain a symbol of strength, intelligence, and bravery, and not just for British women, but for all women. And she says, "I'm fighting for my kingdom and wealth now. I'm fighting as an ordinary person for my lost freedom." And so there she is, the beautiful Boudica. There's some other pictures. All right. And so tomorrow, we're going to talk about a powerful ancient Egyptian pharaoh named Hatshepsut. I may have to look up to see how to say that name. Hatshepsut. All right. And so, my friends, without further ado, today begins our new book. So yesterday we finished Charlotte's Web, and it was a great book. So today we're actually starting the series Hunger Games, and I'm really excited to read this. I'm probably not going to read the whole first chapter. It's pretty long, but we'll get into it as much as we can this morning. So this book is written by Suzanne Collins, and so I invite you to settle in, and we're going to listen to a little bit from the Hunger Games. When I wake up on the other side of the bed is cold. My fingers stretch out, seeking Prem's warmth, but finding only the rough canvas cover of the mattress. She must have had bad dreams and climbed in with our mother. Of course she did. This is the day of the reaping. I prop myself up on my elbow. There's enough light in the bedroom to see them. My little sister Prem curled up on her side, cocooned in my mother's body, their cheeks pressed together. In sleep, my mother looks younger, still warm but not so beaten down. Prem's face is as fresh as a raindrop, as lovely as the primrose for which she was named. My mother was very beautiful once too, or so they tell me. Sitting at Prem's knees, guarding her, is the world's ugliest cat, mashed in nose. Half of one ear missing, eyes the color of rotting squash. Prem named him Buttercup, insisting that his muddy yellow coat matched the bright flower. He hates me, or at least distrusts me. Even though it was years ago, I think he still remembers how I tried to drown him in a bucket when Prem brought him home. Scrawny kitten, belly swollen with worms, crawling with fleas. The last thing I needed was another mouth to feed. But Prem begged so hard, cried even, I had to let him stay. It turned out okay. My mother got rid of the vermin, and he's a born mouser. Even catches the occasional rat. Sometimes I clean a kill. I feed Buttercup the entrails. He has stopped hissing at me. Entrails. No hissing. This is the closest we'll ever come to love. I swing my legs off the bed and slide into my hunting boots, supple leather that is molded to my feet. I pull on trousers, a shirt, tuck my long dark braid into a cap, and grab my forage bag. On the table, under a wooden bowl to protect it from hungry rats and cats alike, sits a perfect little goat cheese wrapped in basil leaves. Prem's gift to me on reaping day. I put the cheese carefully in my pocket as I slip outside. Our part of District 12, nicknamed the Seam, is usually crawling with coal miners heading out to the morning shift at this hour. Men and women with hunched shoulders, swollen knuckles, many who have long since stopped trying to scrub the coal dust out of their broken nails, the lines of their sunken faces. But today, the black cinder streets are empty. Shutters on the squat gray houses are closed. The reaping isn't until 2. May as well sleep in if you can. Our house is almost at the edge of the Seam. I only have to pass a few gates to reach the scruffy field called the meadow, separating the meadow from the woods, in fact, and closing all of District 12. Is a high chain-link fence topped with barbed wire loops. In theory, it's supposed to be electrified 24 hours a day as a deterrent to the predators that live in the woods. Packs of wild dogs, lone cougars, bears that used to threaten our streets. But since we're lucky to get 2 or 3 hours of electricity in the evenings, it's usually safe to touch. Even so, I always take a moment to listen carefully for the hum that means the fence is alive. Right now, it's as silent as a stone, concealed by a clump of bushes. I flatten out my belly and slide under a 2-foot stretch that's been loose for years. There are several other weak spots in the fence, but this one is so close to home, I almost always enter the woods here. As soon as I'm in the trees, I retrieve a bow and sheath of arrows from a hollow log. Electrified or not, the fence has been successful at keeping the flesh eaters out of District 12. Inside the woods, they roam freely, and there are added concerns, like venomous snakes, rabid animals, and no paths to follow. But there's also food if you know how to find it. My father knew and taught me some before he was blown to bits in a mine explosion. There was something even to bury. I was 11 then. 5 years later, I still wake up screaming for him to run. Even though trespassing in the woods is illegal and poaching carries the severest of penalties, more people would risk it if they had weapons. But most are not bold enough to venture out with just a knife. My bow is a rarity crafted by my father, along with a few others that I keep well hidden in the woods, carefully wrapped in waterproof covers. My father could have made good money selling them, but if the officials found out that then he would have been publicly executed for inciting a rebellion. Most of the peacekeepers turn a blind eye to the few of us who hunt because they're hungry for fresh meat as anybody is. In fact, they're among our best customers. But the idea that someone might be arming the Seam would never have been allowed. In the fall, a few brave souls sneak into the woods to harvest apples, but always in sight of the meadow. Always close enough to run back to the safety of District 12 if trouble arises. District 12, where you can starve to death in safety, I mutter. Then I glance quickly over my shoulder. Even here in the middle of nowhere, you worry someone might overhear you. When I was younger, I scared my mother to death. The things I would blurt out about District 12, about the people who rule our country. Panem, from the far-off city called the capital. Eventually, I understood this would only lead us to more trouble, so I learned to hold my tongue and to turn my features into an indifferent mask so that no one could even read my thoughts. Do my work quietly in school, make only polite small talk in the public market, discuss little more than trades in the hob, which is the black market where I make most of my money. Even at home where I am less pleasant, I avoid discussing tricky topics like the reaping or food shortages or the Hunger Games. Prim might begin to repeat my words, and then where would we be? In the woods waits the only person with whom I can be myself, Gale. I can feel the muscles in my face relaxing, my pace quickening as I climb the hills to our place, a rock ledge overlooking a valley. A thicket of berry bushes protects it from unwanted eyes. The sight of him waiting there brings on a smile. Gale says I never smile except in the woods. Hey, Catnip, says Gale. My real name is Katniss, but when I first told him, I barely whispered it, so he thought I said catnip. Then when this crazy lynx started following me around the woods, then looking for handouts, it became his official nickname for me. I finally had to kill the lynx because he scared off game. I almost regretted it because he wasn't bad company, but I got a decent price for his pelt. Look what I shot. Gale holds up a loaf of bread with an arrow stuck in it, and I laugh. It's real bakery bread, not the flat, dense loaves we make from our grain rations. I take it in my hands, pull out the arrow, and hold the puncture in the crust to my nose, inhaling the fragrance that makes my mouth flood with saliva. Fine bread like this is for special occasions. Still warm. He must have been at the bakery at the crack of dawn to trade for it. What did it cost you? I asked. Just a squirrel. Think the old man was feeling sentimental this morning. Even wish me luck, says Gale. Well, we all feel a little closer today, don't we, I say, not even bothering to roll my eyes. Prim left us a cheese. I pull it out. His expression brightens at the treat. Thank you, Prim. We'll have a good feast. Suddenly he falls into a capital accent as he mimics Ivy Trinket, the maniacally upbeat woman who arrives once a year to read out the names at the reaping. I almost forgot. Happy Hunger Games. He plucks a few blackberries from the bushes around us, and may the odds. He tosses a berry in a high arch toward me. I caught it in my mouth and break the delicate skin with my teeth. The sweet tartness explodes across my tongue. May the odds be ever in your favor. I finish with an equal verve. We have to joke about it because the alternative is to be scared out of our wits. Besides, the capital accent is so affected, almost anything sounds funny in it. I watch as Gale pulls out his knife and slices the bread. He could be my brother. Straight black hair, olive skin. We even have the same gray eyes. But we're not related, at least not closely. Most of the families who work the mines resemble one another this way. That's why my mother and Prim, with their light hair and blue eyes, always look out of place. They are. My mother's parents were part of the small merchant class that caters to officials, peacekeepers, and the occasional seam customer. They ran an apothecary shop in the nicer part of District 12. Since almost no one can afford doctors, apothecaries are healers. My father got to know my mother because on his hunts, he would sometimes collect medicinal herbs and sell them to her shop to be brewed into remedies. She must have really loved him to leave her home for the seam. I try to remember that when all I can see is a woman who sat by, blank and unreachable, while her children turned to skin and bones. I try to forgive her for my father's sake, but to be honest, I'm not the forgiving type. Gale spreads the bread slices with the soft goat cheese, carefully placing a basil leaf on each while I strip the bushes of their berries. We settle back in a nook in the rocks. From this place we are invisible, but have a clear view of the valley, which is teeming with summer life. Greens to gather, roots to dig, fish airiedness in the sunlight. The day is glorious with the blue sky and soft breeze. The food's wonderful with the cheese seeping into the warm bread and the berries bursting in our mouths. Everything would be perfect if this really was a holiday. If all the day off meant was roaming the mountains with Gale, hunting for tonight's supper. But instead we have to be standing in the square at 2 o'clock waiting for the names to be called out. We could do it, you know, Gale says quietly. What? Leave the district. Run off, live in the woods. You and I, we can make it, Gale says. I don't know how to respond. The idea is so preposterous. If we didn't have so many kids, he adds quickly. They're not our kids, of course, but they might as well be. Gale's 2 little brothers and a sister, Prim. And you may as well throw in our mothers, too, because how would they live without us? Who would fill those mouths that are always asking for more with both of us hunting daily? There are still nights when game has to be swapped for lard or shoelaces or wool. Still nights when we go to bed with our stomachs growling. I never want to have kids, I said. I might if I didn't live here, Gail says. But you do, I say, irritated. I'm deciding where to leave off here. I may read one more page. Forget it, he snaps back. The conversation feels all wrong. Leave? How could I leave Prem, who is the only person in the world I'm certain I love, and Gail is devoted to his family? We can't leave, so why bother talking about it? And even if we did, where did this stuff about having kids come from? There's never been anything romantic between Gail and me. When we met, I was a skinny 12-year-old, and although he was only 2 years older, he looked like a man. It took a long time for us to even become friends, to stop haggling over every trade and begin helping each other out. Besides, if he wants kids, Gail won't have any trouble finding a wife. He's good looking, he's strong enough to handle the work in the mines, and he can hunt. You can tell by the way the girls whisper about him when he walks by in school that they want him. It makes me jealous, but not for the reason people would think. Good hunting partners are hard to find. What do you want to do? I ask. We can hunt, fish, or gather. Let's fish at the lake. We can leave our poles and gather in the woods. Get something nice for tonight. Tonight after the reaping, everyone's supposed to celebrate, and a lot of people do out of relief that their children have been spared for another year. But at least 2 families will pull their shutters, lock their doors, and try to figure out how they will survive the painful weeks to come. We make out well. The predators ignore us on a day when easier, tastier prey abounds. By late morning, we have a dozen fish, a bag of greens, and best of all, a gallon of strawberries. I found the patch a few years ago, but Gail had the idea to string mesh nets around it to keep out the animals. On the way home, we swing by the Hob, the black market that operates in an abandoned warehouse that once held coal. When they came up with a more efficient system that transported the coal directly from the mines to the trains, the Hob gradually took over the space. Most businesses are closed by this time on reaping day, but the black market's still fairly busy. We easily trade 6 of the fish for good bread, the other 2 for salt. Greasy Say, the bony old woman who sells bowls of hot soup from a large kettle, takes half the grains off our hands in exchange for a couple chunks of paraffin. We might do a tad better elsewhere, but we make an effort to keep on good terms with Greasy Say. She's the only one who can consistently be counted on to buy a wild dog. We don't hunt them on purpose, but if you're attacked and you take out a dog or 2, well, meat is meat. Once it's in the soup, I'll call it beef, Greasy Say says with a wink. No one in the scene would turn up their nose at a good leg of wild dog, but the peacekeepers who come to the Hob can afford to be a little choosier. When we finish our business at the market, we go to the back door of the mayor's house to sell half the strawberries, knowing he has a particular fondness for them and can afford our price. The mayor's daughter, Madge, opens the door. She's in my year at school. Being the mayor's daughter, you expect her to be a snob, but, she's all right. She just keeps to herself, like me, since neither of us really has a good group of friends. We seem to end up together a lot at school, eating lunch, sitting next to each other at assemblies, partnering for sports activities. We rarely talk, which suits us both just fine. All right, so that concludes today's edition of Hunger Games. Tomorrow we'll continue on. And so, my friends, I hope you have a good day. And for those of you who have been watching my bedtime stories, I'll see you tonight around 8 for another edition of Bedtime Stories. But for now, I pray you have a blessed day. Even if it's raining outside, have a blessed day inside and try to find some joy. Much love to all of you.